any emotion that you have either has a negative charge or a positive charge. People are wanting a positive charge and they want positive emotions, but the reality is that that's still imbalanced. So anything you have an infatuation with or a positive charge to, you're going to fear the loss of it. So that's what creates anxieties. If you're wanting to be happy, you have a fear of being sad, or you have an anxiety about being sad. And that's what drives depression. Some of the most depressed people I know are looking for a happy life, so they're the most depressed. So anything in your brain that you have a perception of, an experience that you have a negative pain perception or a positive pleasure perception, you'll have an emotion with. And that's again a function of the amygdala, because it wants to seek the pleasure and avoid the pain. When you're neutral and you're stable, you don't mind either. You're willing to embrace both. So you're stable, you're objective, you're neutral. So when it comes to trauma, the word trauma etymologically just means wound. It's a selective perception to pain. Moments in your timeline, you've perceived more pain than pleasure. And the degree of that, you see, if it's just above, you might just call that, oh, that was just I didn't like that moment. If it's a little bit more, let's say it's a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 pains to 1 pleasure. If it's a 3-to-1, you might call it a strong dislike. If it's a 4-to-1, it's a strong despise. If it's an individual that's doing something. If it's a 5-to-1, it's a strong resent. If it's a 6-to-1, it's a big FU. And it might get to a 10-to-1 where you go, I'm traumatized. Because the amount of painful associations in your brain are way higher than the pleasures. And so at some degree, you're just going to call it traumatic. And that then creates a charge in the body that you feel. You only feel by what you think, because you cannot have an emotion without content in the mind. The mind and body are one. The mind-body connection is just so well established now. You cannot have an emotion without content in the brain.
So our emotions are skewed by an experience.
An experience that is actually neutral, and we put a subjective bias on it. We call it good or bad. It was Shakespeare that said there's nothing good or bad in this world, but thinking makes it so. We have to put the assigned meaning, in other words, our perception, on what we see, perception, that gives us meaning. This was a pleasurable moment or a painful moment, or just a moment of love and gratitude, a moment of stability, a moment that was neutral, good or bad.
So how do people seek responsibility to become aware that there's a huge payoff for them to play the victim? Because it's pretty much basically saying their whole life is sort of a lie or a skewed perception of reality. It's quite a confronting realization.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, massively. And I'm not negating. And the thing is too, just to digress, I'm not negating the pain. And that's sometimes what I think people get mostly triggered by, is they think, oh, here's this arsehole on a podcast who's like invalidating my pain. It's actually quite the opposite. I'm 100% validating your pain, because that's what you're already conscious of. I want to add to an ever greater truth to realize that you cannot have a perception without two things going on at the same time. There is no one-sided experience. There is no one-sided perception. The brain won't allow it. And
Can you explain that?
Just make note of what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Every perception you have births pairs of opposites. Wilhelm Wundt, the experimental psychologist, and even William James, great psychologist, they showed clearly that the only reason you know hot is because we have cold. The only reason you know black is because we have white. The only reason we know there's a background is because there's a foreground. So every ology in nature and science, everywhere you look, the masculine, feminine, the day, the night, the sun, the moon, the summer, the winter, the up, the down, the positive, everything in life has two sides. Who are we to think that inside our own brain and our body, which is part of the fabric and structure of existence itself, we're not separate from the universe, also has two sides? We have two eyes. We have two perceptions going on 24/7. It's just that our brain filters them out through bias in the amygdala, not the forebrain, but in the amygdala, with pleasure, the assigned valency of what we call positive experiences, and assigned valency of negativity or painful experiences. And then we store that in our subconscious mind, and anything that reminds us of that, we either seek it because it was pleasurable, or we avoid it because it was painful. So we're operating on a pain-pleasure dynamic, you might say, until we become stable and see both sides simultaneously.
So we need to so is our subconscious mind trying to hide sort of the negative, and our conscious mind's trying to seek the positive? And are we trying to discover the neutrality of like the experience?
The trigger is the feedback to let you know where the valency is. Because if you're infatuated with a guy or a girl, you'll fear their loss, you'll have an anxiety about them leaving you, or a grief of you leaving them, because there's a pleasure there. In fact, if you look at the symptoms of grief and the symptoms of drug withdrawal, they're almost the exact same thing. So if you have a anxiety about someone leaving you, it's because there's an attachment, there's a pleasure association, and the pain's letting you know that you have a lopsided perception on that individual. You've got an attachment to them. And in the same way, you've got the complete opposite. When you don't like someone coming towards you, that's the feedback to let you know in your brain, you've got more negative associations. They're like the predator. They're like the ex-boyfriend, right?
Mm.
So you would grieve their gain, whereas the one that you feel tonic to, you grieve their loss. The one that you feel toxic to, you grieve their gain. And that's the feedback, or anything you like or dislike. This could be even money. If you infatuate with money and you have all this pleasure association to money, you might fear gaining it and you'll fear losing it. You might fear gaining it because you're going to lose it, or you fear losing it because you've got all this attachment to money. You may have wounding with money and then you fear its gain. You kind of block it out because it reminds you of things that are painful. Maybe you had it once and you lost it all, or you had all this large sum of money and someone stole it. And so anything experience that you subconsciously have stored with pain or pleasure is the feedback. It's letting you know there's imbalances there. So it's more of a psychological feedback to let you know what you're perceiving, to what degree you have pain or pleasure, to then ultimately, it's not you need to, it's just you get to. I mean, you get to do a subconscious reprogramming and balance that, dissolve any, you might say, wounding or pains or ecstatic memories, because again, you might go, I wish I could go back to that time. I help people also dissolve their ecstatic moments, not just their traumatic, but their ecstatic too. Because that's usually when they say, I wish life could go back to that. And it was so great then. And they might have all this nostalgia and they feel like they're, I'm living here, but I want it to go back the way it was, which is, again, is kind of the depression. So I help them dissolve that too. It's not just trauma. It's also ecstatic moments. And I say it's wise to do both ecstatic and traumatic. Because if you have ecstatic memories, you want to go back there and relive it and not appreciate the present moment. If you have traumatic, you're going to want to escape it and not relive it. And so both of those sides of the positive and negative are distracting you and pulling you from being present and focus on your mission in life and kind of expanding and being most empowered.
What happens if we become aware that we have a wounding, we become aware that we're triggered by certain things? How do we actually introspect and then dissolve this?
I mean, I do it obviously case by case because I need to ask each individual, what's actually going on in their mind.
Do you want to do it for me?
Yeah, sure. I'll explain the process first.
Okay,
I'm going to do it for you. First of all, embrace your humanity. I mean, no matter what happens in life, you're going to have emotions. As long as we're in a physical body, just so we're really clear about this, you're going to have emotions. So it's not about avoiding emotions and avoiding feeling and avoiding pain in life. And that's why I said to you before, when you first asked the question, you said, how would you describe what I do? I help people see the perfection of their pain. I'm not here to get rid of your pain. I'm not here to get rid of your emotions. Welcome to being human. So I help people also embrace their humanity. That's the first thing. So if you're triggered and you have this thing, because, the common story is that there's something wrong with me. And a lot of the time with, when people have these high charges of trauma or PTSD, they feel insular and they feel shame. They generally self-minimize. And the interpretation of that perception is a belief, I'm unworthy, or I'm dirty, or I'm wrong, or I'm not good enough. And so those interpretations, I want to help them understand and appreciate. So if you have that trigger and you have that experience and you have these traumas and these things you feel are holding you back in life, the first thing is just to acknowledge them and appreciate them for what they are and not make them good or bad, because that's a judgment within a judgment in itself. Just to go, I have this and that's okay. Like, welcome to my humanity. And to know, again, depending on what level of tool or resources these individuals have access to, especially for your listeners, to then how to work with that and dissolve it. So to turn it from something in the way to on the way. And be grateful for. So let's just say I'll just use a typical example and then kind of use you as well if you want. I will do a broader explanation of the Demartini Method, but anything that you start with that you call painful, because most people want to get rid of their traumas. Yeah. Most people don't want to get rid of their ecstasies. When you start developing mastery, you tend to want to do both, because you realize that both infatuations and resentments are disastrous to self-mastery.
Is with that, I feel like, explain that with let's say, for example, for me, like, it's money. I know there's like a trigger around money, and if I look back at my story and experiences, like, it's clear like why. But like, are you saying that like you can't have one side of the equation? Like, let's say I can't become like happy and ecstatic when I'm receiving money and on that process, but then
you can be grateful, but that's not happy. Grateful is a perfectly equilibrated state. True gratitude is being grateful for the downs and the ups. People are thinking to pseudo gratitude, which is when people support them, which is one side. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But then if people challenge them, it's F you, F you, F you. But if you actually are grateful for both and you embrace both the support and challenge, you have true gratitude.
So that's the yin and the yang. Because I'm thinking like, this is the very black and white thinking that my mind's conditioned to. It's like, if I get money or receive money, that's like the positive. Where's the negative?
Talk to a billionaire and ask them, how many downsides do you have to having money? They'll tell you. Yeah. There's downsides to having money. And if you're not aware of that and you infatuate with money, you'll fear its loss, and you may not then receive more of it because Your intuition knows that if you are not willing to manage your emotions, you can't manage money. Don't expect to manage money or large sums of money. This is why people who win the lottery and you go manic, the research shows the vast majority lose it. And a good percentage of that end up actually worse off with less net worth than when they started. Because it's called sudden wealth syndrome. And it's because they go manic in their brain, which destabilizes them. They get infatuated with the idea, and it's all this positive, happy, and they squander it all. So that's a perfect example of just showing that if you don't have a stable mind when it comes to anything, a relationship, money, your business, if you're not looking with foresight, both sides of the scenario, you're going to have emotions and you're going to be vulnerable. And that's what I was saying before, anything you infatuate with or resent, it occupies space and time of the mind and reverberates as noise and is distressful. Because when you meet a hot chick and you can't, if you're highly infatuated with her, you can't sleep at night. That's distressful. And you're going to fear the loss of her and grieve the loss of her. If you're highly resentful towards her, let's say you've been married for 10 years, then you grieve the gain of her and you can't sleep at night because she's pissed you off. But if you love and appreciate and you become conscious of both sides, in other words, when you're infatuated with a chick, what are the downsides? And start neutralizing the brain and becoming conscious of what you're overlooking, which is actually what your intuition's doing. Your intuition is a homeostatic feedback to get you present and balanced. You're looking at the downsides when you're infatuated and the upsides when you're resentful. And that can balance out the brain noise.
Do you think people are like, I want to hear your opinion on this. People like follow your intuition. Is that a narrow-minded approach to what that voice is?
I'm a big fan of that. Now, that's different from following your instincts.
Okay, explain.
Your intuition and your instincts are the complete opposite things, which is where people get confused. Your intuition is a negative feedback system to breed homeostasis. In other words, if I go into infatuation with money, a woman, some part of my life, my intuition's whispering, yo, you're overlooking some of the downsides. It's helping me neutralize that positive charge to become stable. Because that stability is where the power's at. It's where you're most authentic. It's where you're most stable and most powerful. If I'm resentful, my intuition's letting go, yo, you're overlooking some things. What are the upsides? Because again, if I'm highly manic with something, I might be gullible to a scam. So I need critical thinking and negative thinking, and that's my intuition helping me ground me and stabilize my brain, stabilize my perception, stabilize my emotions. And if I'm highly charged and resentful, my intuition, if I'm listening, is actually going, what are you overlooking? Where's the upsides? You're too skeptical. There's things you're overlooking. So it's in other words, there's the positive going out direction. You might say to positive charge or negative charge. Your intuition is a negative. It's pulling you back to the center.
Okay. Wow.
To breed stability and homeostasis. So that lives in the brain. Your instincts are in the gut. That's why they call them gut instincts. They're meant for survival. So that's a positive feedback system. It actually amplifies the very thing. When you have a gut instinct, you're getting triggered by something that seems predatorial. That's pain. And that's coming towards you that in your brain, the amygdala part, for survival, is perceiving as predator. And so, like the mirrors we were talking about before, we have the Cytec mirrors, and if anyone listening, the mirrors that are true reflection are a flat mirror, and then you have the concave mirror where you go skinny, and the convex mirror where you go fat and wide. Yeah. And so they're distortions, and they're exaggerations of the truth, whether it's minimizing the truth or exaggerating the truth. They're not pure reflective awareness, they're distortions. And so they're, you might say, amplifications of the truth in one way or the other, and that's what impulses, and in just this case we'll speak of instincts, your gut instincts are amplifying the danger and making them more than what they actually are in order to survive. So in other words, when a car's about to run me over, in a billionth of a second, my brain is amplifying how dangerous that actually is, because if I don't get the hell out of the way, I'm going to die. So that's why I have a huge surge of adrenaline and I go into survival mode and a very spastic reactive mode. I don't have time to go, that car's traveling about 60 kilometers per hour. If I stay here on this tarmac here, it's probably going to bash my kneecaps and that's going to hurt. There's no time for that. There is no logic and rationale. It's quick and spastic. And that's what an instinct is. It's to help you survive and get away from danger. So you have emotions that are amplified. So your intuition's trying to bring you back to stability. Your instincts are helping you survive from danger.
The more traumatized people are, the more they rely on their instincts and the more conditioned they are to use.
Yes, but I wouldn't even say it's a conscious thing. It's because the blood glucose and oxygen, their resources are more governed into the amygdala. So it becomes almost their daily life.
And that's controlled by the mind probe,
through perception.
Okay.
But to the level of their soul, nothing's missing, and they've got a higher order. But the more that you are in the amygdala, the more and more that signal gets reduced. And that's what becomes harder and harder. So the willingness and the tenacity to grow, something that is deep inside of an individual that wants to overcome their challenges and see the hidden order in their apparent chaos, I think has to come from a deeper aspect of themselves, which you might call the soul or the higher self, the higher order of who their human existence. At some point, you know, people, if they're willing, have to ask the question. I won't say even have to ask the question. They may ask the question, why am I here on this planet? Like, am I meant to be living like this my entire existence? Or is there a beauty and a magnificence of the world that I'm just not seeing? And some form of introspection where it just almost like clicks, and like you might have had it yourself, like whether it's through trauma or not, this like curiosity or this thirst to understand how this life works. We're on this organic spaceship floating through, you know, a cluster called the Milky Way galaxy, just going at hundreds of thousands of billions, you know, of kilometers per hour through these super galaxies and these supernova, super clusters of whatever the hell this thing is called life. And to come out of that insular, you know, very egocentric view of yourself and this trapped part of yourself to ask a deeper question, like what is out there, what is in there, and how can I embrace life in all of its beauty? Like at what point? And I think that is, I can't, you know, I can only speculate, but I think that comes from when people just, they want more from life. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired. They're tired of running their story. They're tired of feeling trapped, because I can certainly speak on that behalf. I felt trapped by my body. Then I had mental health issues. I felt trapped by my mind. Like I wanted more. My soul was not here to live feeling trapped in my human existence. And so I think it's just a deeper aspect of the human psyche, and again, maybe even the soul or the higher self, that eventually starts to come through. And that's when you can start bringing more executive function, because that's also where your brain and heart link up. You have coherence and you're able to experience love. Until then, when you have all these volatile emotions and these charged perceptions, you're going to feel stuck in your amygdala and stuck in your quote unquote trauma body and stuck in the story. And that's why it feels like it's torture and you're suffering, because you feel trapped. It's like being a prisoner of your own mind, and you're the one with the key, but it's, you know, you don't know how to get out. Like you have the key, but it's like, I don't know how to use it. I don't know how to get out. I'm stuck.